Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. Idaho Matters is taking a deep dive into the loss of farmland here in the Gem State. Are you a farmer? What challenges do you face as farmland shrinks in Idaho? We want to hear your story. Email us at idahomatters@boisestate.edu or leave us a voicemail using the Talk to Us feature in the Boise State Public Radio app. And then listen to our series on farming called Land and Legacy. Episodes available on Monday afternoons in the Idaho Matters podcast feed. From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. One of the most recognized legal minds in America will be speaking in Boise tomorrow to a sold-out crowd. Alan Dershowitz is a longtime Harvard Law School professor and constitutional scholar. He's argued some of our nation's most high-profile cases before the Supreme Court, and he's been at the center of some of the most consequential legal and political debates of our time, from impeachment trials to free speech controversies. And he's joining us now to talk more. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, and thanks for inviting me. There's only, I think, 4 or 5 states left that I had never visited, and Idaho was one of them. So thank you for helping me complete my map of the United States.
Well, welcome to Boise. We are, I know it's a sold-out lecture series tomorrow, so a lot of people definitely looking forward to you being here. I'm curious. You've often said that the Constitution must be interpreted consistently, regardless of politics. So
Right.
do you think that principle is holding up in today's polarized climate?
Absolutely not, and that's the theme of my lecture, trying to put an end to the weaponization of the Constitution and to lawfare. We're seeing the Constitution being used in a partisan manner, and we're seeing it devalued. People now interpret the Constitution the way they want it to come out, not the way the founders, the framers, and people throughout the last 200 and something years have interpreted the Constitution. So I'm going to be making a talk in favor of a neutral, objective view of the Constitution that will allow it to last another several hundred years. It's the longest enduring Constitution in the history of the world, and may it live for many, many, many more centuries.
So as I mentioned, Mr. Dershowitz, you have argued before the Supreme Court many times. How do you think the court has changed, both in tone and philosophy, over the past few decades? And then how does that impact the interpretation of the Constitution?
Well, I think it's become more overtly political. It's always had a political component, starting with when Jefferson became president and John Adams tried to pack the court with his midnight judges. Throughout history, there's been a tension between an objective, neutral judiciary and a judiciary that does the bidding either of the executive or the legislature. But we're seeing it more openly and more overtly now, and we're also seeing the media focusing more on it, more attention on it. So it's become a subject of great interest and dispute, not only among academics, but among people in the general public. That, I think, is a fairly healthy development. If you're going to have politicization, let's at least do it transparently. Let's know it, and let's see if we can do something about it.
Do you think the courts need to do more in regards to how they are viewed? And what I mean by that is there has been a lot of public distrust toward the judiciary lately, in particular the U.S. Supreme Court. So what, in your view, can be done to restore confidence in this system?
Well, confidence has to be genuine, not artificial. There's a great line from an old film in which the actress is told by the judge, "You're showing contempt for the court." And Mae West responds by saying, "No, Your Honor, I'm doing my best to conceal my contempt for the court." And it's important that if you have a contemptuous attitude toward any branch of government, that you are prepared to express it and give reasons for it, not just name calling, but good reasons for why you object to it. That's a process, by the way, that's happening all over the world. It's happening today in Israel, where there's a big dispute about judicial reform. It's happening in England. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in Australia. We're seeing the judiciaries in democracies being subject to more and more criticism as they become more and more involved in issues that concern day-to-day affairs of the citizens. If judges only make decisions that involve interpretations of the law that have no impact on the average person doesn't pay attention to the court. But when the court's making decisions about health care, about abortion, about immigration, about a range of issues that matter to people, they're going to say, who are these judges and why are we listening to them? And so the court, if it's going to get involved in these issues, has to justify it.
What about the idea of transparency or accountability on the court, or does that risk politicizing it further? I mean, because we know there doesn't at least seem on the surface to be a lot of accountability for U.S. Supreme Court justices, where if you go down to a local court, a state level court, a county level court, judges have more accountability at a much lower level than our U.S. Supreme Court justices seem to have.
Yeah, and there's a trade-off. If you, for example, televise Supreme Court decisions or the decisions of all the courts, it's much more transparent, but it also puts more pressure on judges and justices to satisfy the general public. So there's a trade-off. The courts are not supposed to be democratic institutions. Judges, for the most part, Supreme Court justices, federal judges, are appointed for life. In states, it's very different, state by state. But they're supposed to be insulated from the processes of democracy to a degree. So it's a tension, and it's one of the things I plan to talk about, how to resolve this tension between democracy on the one hand, accountability, and the insulation of the judiciary to try to be above it all. You know, in the old days in England, all the judges wore wigs, and they were all white, and they were all male, and they wore a wig and the robe in order to make them look the same and be the same, because the message was supposed to be the law is an abstraction. It doesn't depend on who the individual person is. But of course it does. Of course, what decisions are made depends on who makes them. So we've been fighting these fights now since the beginning of our republic.
I want to talk about free speech for a moment. You have been a lifelong defender of free speech, even for voices that many folks disagree with. And we are definitely in a time right now where the freedom of speech is on the forefront. And we've seen it on both sides of the political spectrum. Yeah. I'm curious about how you see free speech, maybe the boundaries shifting at all, right? I mean, we have social media, we have so much more when it comes to freedom of speech. And I also think a lack of understanding of the freedom of speech.
Well, I think that's true of all constitutional rights. We have a lack of understanding. There will be protests against my appearing at the university. There are people out there who have written to the selection committee and to others saying I should never have been allowed to speak. And there are some who are saying my speech should be canceled. Wherever I speak, there are those protests. And some of the protests are based on who I have represented over the years, which involves also another constitutional right under the Sixth Amendment. The important thing is to keep it neutral, to make sure that free speech is never suppressed based on content or based on who you represented or who you voted for or any of those issues. Free speech is designed for the most controversial speech. And I'm a controversial person, a controversial speaker. And I'm pleased that the university persists in allowing me to express my views. I will take questions on any subject and be open to criticism and comment. That's what public debate's all about. But I think it's crucially important that a variety of speakers, not only speakers who everybody agrees with, but speakers who are controversial and who many people disagree with, be allowed to speak. It's not them being allowed to speak. That's not the most important thing. The important thing is having the audience have access to different points of view. And that certainly is what universities should be about, presenting a diversity of points of view so that people can think for themselves. Professors at universities should never be teaching students what to think. They should be teaching them how to think critically, and having a variety of speakers on a variety of subjects, including controversial speakers, is very helpful, I think, in sending a message that we want you to think critically about everything.
Do you believe that we are potentially at risk of losing the core value of freedom for the thought we hate, as Justice Holmes put it?
Yes, I think we are. I think the younger generation today in college, many, not all, maybe not even most, but many don't value free speech for points of view they disagree with. They think it's free speech for me, but not for thee. They know the truth, capital T, the truth. And why allow people to come and tell what they believe are lies? So I think we are seeing free speech in danger today. And the dangers always begin at colleges and universities. Nazism began at the University of Munich, the University of Heidelberg, the University of Berlin. Communism, the same. Cuba, Pol Pot. They all had support from among young people who believed that they knew what the truth was and that they could produce a utopian world, an idealistic world without dissent. As Winston Churchill once said of democracy, I say about free speech, it may be the worst possible solution except for all the others that have been tried over time.
You've represented, as you mentioned, some very controversial clients over the years. I'm curious to know how you look at this in regards to the fact that everyone has a right to defense, and they are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Yet, we are very much aware that the court of public opinion seems to be much louder in this day and age. And I think that impacts, when attorneys like you take on these clients that frankly people hate.
Yeah, and let's be clear about it. The vast majority of people charged with crime are guilty, and the majority of my own clients have been guilty. Thank God for that. Would you ever want to live in a country where the majority of people charged with crime were innocent? Yeah, that's Cuba, that's China, that's Russia, that's many other countries that are tyrannical. In the United States, the majority of people charged with crime, brought to trial, are guilty, and most of them are convicted. But to keep it that way, you have to have vigorous defense lawyers who are prepared to challenge the government at every turn, put them to the proof, make them prove it. If they prove it, fine. And if they don't prove it, some guilty people will go free. But we've gone back historically to an expression that really comes from the Bible. Better 10 guilty go free than one innocent be wrongly confined. That story has its origin in the argument between Abraham and God over the sinners of Sodom, where God and Abraham argue about how many potential innocent people should be subjected to God's wrath in order to prevent how many evil people from going forward. This is a challenge that we face from the beginning of civilization, and I'm glad to be a small part of it in my generation.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to speak with us. Really appreciated the conversation. We've been talking with constitutional scholar and defense attorney Alan Dershowitz. He will be the featured speaker at tomorrow's University of Idaho Bellwood Lecture Series. The University of Idaho College of Law is an underwriter of Boise State Public Radio. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
Sources and methods, the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Shorthand for how do we know what's real? Who told us? If you have those answers, you're on the inside, and NPR wants to bring you there. From the Pentagon to the State Department to spy agencies, listen to understand what's really happening and what it means for you. Sources and Methods, the new national security podcast from NPR.